Good morning, everyone. I'm Michael. I'm going to be your host for around about the next 45 minutes. Some of you may have attended importing of records yesterday. This will be a very similar session, but obviously we're going to be looking at importing transactions. So where you can use it, how you can use it, and hopefully how it saves you time as well. But it will just sort of develop your knowledge just that little bit further if you did attend the importing records session. So hopefully you can stick with me this morning, be about 45 minutes. For those of you that haven't attended, or sorry, for those of you that did attend yesterday, the start may be a little bit repetitive because it is essentially the same sort of theory, but obviously the demos we're going to be using loads of different transaction files to import today. Now, just before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping, just like we normally follow. So we don't need a microphone. If you have one and you have enabled it, you'll find it's muted. You can't unmute yourself. So any questions that you might have today, just pop them into the questions panel. To access that, you just need to click the little speech bubble icon, which is on your taskbar down the right-hand side of your screen. Give it a click. You'll have access to that box in the bottom corner that you can then start typing into. Remember to click send, otherwise I don't get them. So if you're wondering why I haven't answered your question, that will probably be why. Just myself running the session with you today, so do bear with me when you submit the questions. I'll try my best. We've not got many of you logged in this morning, so just approaching double figures there. So as I say, do bear with me, but hopefully the numbers are low enough for me to be able to answer those questions as you submit them. I'll try my best to pick them all up though. Obviously, there is an opportunity to download the handout today as well, which is just a copy of the slides, usual two versions of those available. And as usual, the session is being recorded as well. So watch out for your follow-up email. It'll include a link to that recording if you need a bit of a recap. So again, in the future, if you think, oh, I could use import for that, how do you do that again? If you keep the email handy, then you'll have the link so you can watch it again, just to remind yourself of the steps involved. Right, okay, so let's have a look at what we're covering. So quick introduction to importing, just in general. Again, this is the bit that's going to be a little bit repetitive. Preparing your data as well. We're going to look at obviously quite a few demonstrations in today's session. It's all about sort of trying to ingrain that process and familiarize you with it while pointing out, I suppose, the pitfalls and the benefits along the way. So when I say the pitfalls, the kind of things that catch people out, or the common questions that we get asked, we'll be trying to pick those up along the way. And if you have used import before, hopefully you'll either get that reassurance of what you know is right. Hopefully you'll be feeling a lot more confident anyway, but again, hopefully just a better understanding of things to avoid. We'll obviously pick up on troubleshooting as well, pretty much the same as yesterday's session as well. And then just right at the end, explain more about the additional support. And then, excuse me, and then if there are any outstanding questions, I'll pick those up as well. Laura, you mentioned about subtitles there. I'm assuming you can hear me. There's not an option for that one on the interface that we're using for the webinars. Right, anyway, let's get started. So again, brief introduction to import. So if you did attend yesterday's session, you'll be familiar with this one. So the idea of importing is that if you have data that comes from other software, or maybe you just build up on a spreadsheet, that type of thing, then rather than key that in manually, then what you can do is import that information. So bringing it into your software, saving you time. So avoiding having to sit there and type it in, and possibly bring in the potential issue of things like typos and just specifying wrong information. So uses-wise, for adding new data, and this is quite important for this specific session, for importing transactions, you can only use the import to bring in new transactions. You can't amend and update existing transactions. Whereas you can do that with records. So importing, you can add new records, or you can use it to update existing records. So things like if you wanted to update credit limits or payment terms or move the address information around within, like if your customer records, for instance, then you can use the import option to essentially update those existing records for you. So benefits, and hopefully this will become more apparent as we run through the session. You'll hopefully see my transactions build up quite quickly in this morning's session. The idea is it saves you time, it's flexible, and again, hopefully it avoids those mistakes that's I suppose inevitable if you're keying in information manually. So again, it's one of those, once you understand the option, hopefully going forwards, there'll be those moments where you just think, oh, I could use import for that, might save me a bit of time. So things like if your accountant gives you a list of adjustments at year end, rather than just giving you a printed list or popping them on an email, could they complete one of the import templates and pop the information on for you that you can then just import into accounts? Or can they provide the majority of the information that you just then add any missing information and then import? Similar for your colleagues, if they give you a list of expenses, could you convert that process and get them keying in directly onto a spreadsheet that you can then maybe just quickly check, fill in any blanks, and then import that again rather than sitting keying that in manually? So what can you import? So I suppose it's split into two. You can import records such as customers and suppliers, products, but also transactions. Now we're going to be concentrating today on transactions, and specifically we're going to concentrate on audit trail transactions. So those are the transactions that appear in your transactions list. So like bank payments, bank receipts, invoices appear on that list, credit notes. So those types of transactions, that's what we're going to be looking at when we're talking about audit trail transactions. With the same sort of, I suppose the same rules and the same processes will apply if you are importing other transaction types. Now, some of the options there will be dependent on the level of your software, whether you've got that or not. So it depends whether you're on Essentials, Standard, or Professional. I'm going to be using Professional today, but so that it's relevant to every level, I'm going to be, as I mentioned, I'm going to be importing audit trail transactions. I'll explain more about the audit trail transactions and the audit trail transactions grouped a little bit later on. Now, as far as preparing your data is concerned, again, many years ago, it used to be quite a cumbersome task preparing your data, but these days you've got import templates that are provided. You've also got the data import wizard as well, meaning that when you're importing transactional information, it doesn't necessarily need to be in a specific order. It used to be all those years ago, but these days you can just say, right, the net value of that transaction is in that column, the tax code's in that column, the nominal code that it needs to go against is in that column. They don't have to be in a specific order these days. So if you have used it in the past, and maybe that's why you've been put off from using it, then as you'll see in the demonstration today, it's a lot more flexible. Now, import templates are provided for you. Easy to access as well. Easiest way is just to access the data import wizard and then click the link. So let's have a look at one of those first of all. You can of course use your own files as long as it does contain. Just bear with me one moment there. Sorry about that. Right. Okay, so the templates which we'll access in just a moment, I'll show you how to access that, give you an idea of what's included on them as well, but you can use your own files. So, if that comes from elsewhere, it's not necessarily in the right format, the right headings, that's fine. You can use those as well. Right, let's get stuck in then. Just switch across to Sage just to show you where you would access the templates. So I'll share my screen. And if we just go to File and then down to Import. Now, I mentioned this one on the importing record session. It is what you would term a program exclusive request, this one. So meaning that all of your colleagues need to be logged out of this specific Sage account or your set of data. No, it just need to be logged out of the data or the company that you're in if you've got multiple companies. If you've just got the one company, then basically they just need to be out of Sage, so they need to be logged out. If they're not logged out, when you try to access that option, they will, or you'll get the message saying you can't access this because such and such is logged in. So just be a case of getting them to log out, and then you'll be able to access this option. So anyway, we'll go to File and then Import. And we're on step 1. So this is the link in paragraph 2 that we want. If I just click that, it'll open the relevant folder for me. So this is where you access the import templates. So we'll start with the first one, this audit trail transactions full template. Now the templates are essentially read-only. So if you're going to be using the templates, when you open them, you can either copy them and they'll still be flagged as read-only if you paste them somewhere, but you just need to do a save as. So if I open that template in Excel, and I'll just quickly run you through the type of information that it's asking for. So basically, when it comes to importing via a template, each transaction would need to be on an individual row. And it's got certain headings on the templates as well. Now the ones in this sort of bluey aqua color are what you would term a required field. So for each transaction that you want to import, you've got to mention or you've got to include something in each of those sort of bluish columns. So you need to specify the transaction type, the account reference, the nominal account reference, the date, the net amount, the tax code, and the tax amount as well. So those are what you would term, I suppose, the critical fields. The ones in yellow are optional fields, so you don't have to put something into that specific column. So you can leave it blank. If you don't put anything into that one, if there is a default for a specific transaction type, it will pick that up as you import. So for instance, if we were importing a sales invoice against a customer account, then the department code, if we leave that one blank, it would pick up the department code from the relevant customer's record. Now, if you do hover over the relevant fields, it will give you more information about it. So it'll tell me for the type, it's a required field, so I must complete it. Description, it tells me this is a code identifying the type of transaction. And then format, it's letters only. Restrictions, it must match one of the transaction types listed below. And then it gives you a list of the transaction types. Now, one thing to be aware of with customer and supplier transactions, and we'll pick up on this a little bit later on, is that you can't import a sales receipt, so an SR. Instead, that would need to be flagged as an SA, so a sales receipt on account. Or you can't import a PP, transaction of purchase payment. Instead, that would need to be imported as a PA transaction. But all the other transaction types are essentially supported. And you'll get the similar options if you just hover over each of the relevant fields there. So we're going to be using a mixture of my own files where we don't use a template and some that do, just so you can see the difference in the sort of processes we're following that through. Right, let's close that for the time being. We'll pop back to the slides for a second. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to quickly move on. And just to quickly mention, Data Import Wizard, you've just seen me access that one. So you access that via File and then Import. Again, just to stress, it is what you would term a program exclusive request, that one, meaning that everyone else needs to be logged out. Now, I mentioned this one quite a few times in the importing records session. And it's in step 1, it prompts you with a backup option. Take a backup. If you import transactions and then maybe you've made a mistake, you've selected the wrong file, there's not an easy way to undo, or well, the only easy way to undo that import is by restoring the backup that you would have taken at that point to take you back to this sort of current point in time. Otherwise, it'd be a case of you manually going through and then deleting the transactions one at a time. So imagine if you would import 500 transactions, a lot easier if you've got that backup available that you could restore to if you needed to undo it, rather than sit there and go, right, next one, delete, next one, delete, next one, delete. It's quite a few to go through. That's quite time consuming. So take that backup. Again, as I keep mentioning yesterday, don't be that person that rings us up and says, right, I've done this in error. How do I undo it? And you haven't got that backup. Right, let's get stuck into some demonstrations then. So obviously you've got loads of demonstrations, loads of files that we're going to run through just so you can see what that looks like. Right, I'll find the right option and I'll share my screen. There we go. Right, let's get rid of the templates and we'll just close out of the data import wizard for the time being. And these are the files that I've got prepared. So the first one that we're going to look at, it does use a template. If I just open it, just so you can see what the kind of information that's in there. And we've got loads of transactions there. So you can see loads of the columns, the yellow ones, they are blank. So that's absolutely fine, not a problem. They are optional. The ones with the blue though, they must have something completed against them. So if we just scroll down, we can see we've got 101 rows. So with the titles removed, that would be 100 transactions that are essentially going to import. Now, they are older transactions. It doesn't really matter about that too much for the purpose of the demo. So rather than me sit there and manually update all those dates, that's what I'm going to import in today's session, just to show you the process. But you can see on here, we've got a mixture of bank payments, we've got receipts, we've got an invoice, purchase invoice, we've got journals, we've got a payment on account. What else have we got? I'll mention bank receipts. We've got a purchase invoice on there as well. So just taking that first line as an example, this bank payment, it says BP, so it's a bank payment. We want it to go against bank account 1200. The nominal is 5,000. I've got department code number 1 entered. I've got a date entered. I've got a reference, some details. I've got the net amount, the tax code, and also the tax amount. So that's fine. Got all the relevant information that is required. Now things like obviously when you're using an account reference or a nominal code, or if it's a customer transaction like this one, for instance, on row 4, things like the nominal codes and the account references, they must exist. It will not create them on the fly for you as part of this process. Things like even like dates, it's got to be a valid date. Right, so as usual, make sure you've got your import file closed, otherwise you will get a message when you try to access the import file. But we're going to import those transactions. Now, if we just pop into transactions, you can see mine's blank. So imagine someone giving me that list of transactions that I need to enter into my software. How long is it going to take me to key in those 100 transactions? Probably quite a bit. I mentioned this yesterday, not the fastest at typing. So how long would that take me? An hour? More? Probably. But let's say it's being provided to us in the format it has. So we're just going to import that. So File, Import, launches the wizard. Again, take your backup at this stage. Once you've done that, you click Next. What is it you want to import? I'm going to come back to the difference between audit trail transactions and audit trail transactions grouped a little bit later, but we'll just choose audit trail transactions for the time being. What type of file is it? Is it a CSV or is it an Excel file? Well, it's the template, so it's saved as an Excel file. We then click Browse, and on my desktop, I've got that Import Transactions folder. So we'll select that file that we want to import that contains those 100 transactions. So highlight it, click Open. Now mine does contain headings, so leave that box ticked. Click Next. Now the mapping is done automatically. Now again, some of you will be familiar with this, others if you've not touched import before, maybe not. What the mapping is basically saying is, right, this is the fields in Sage that you can import into for a transaction. For the file you've selected, which column contains that information? Now, because we've used a template, the mapping is done automatically for us. It's got the same headings, it recognizes it. You may even find on yours that some of your headings actually match the headings that Sage requires, such as date. Not sure what else you're going to put as a heading for that column. But things like you might put tran or tran type, obviously it wouldn't match that. So it would just be a case of if you're using your own file or even on the template, if you've renamed them, the column headings, and it doesn't match automatically, it'd just be a case of you selecting from the drop-down which column contains your information. So anyway, because it's a template and I've not changed those headings, the mapping is done for me. If you're doing it manually, then using your own file, then you must make sure you've got something mapped against any of the rows there that have an asterisk in that required column. Those are the required fields. So anyway, also done. So I'm just going to click Next. We're on to step 5 at this point, so ready to go. Just click Import. And then it does the job. It does 2 passes. The first pass, just in case anyone's wondering about that, the first pass is when it reads the information in the import file and it checks it to make sure that information is valid. So things like correct transaction types, make sure that the nominal code that the transaction relates to, make sure that nominal code exists. So it's just validating all that information. And then it does pass 2, where it's writing the information into your accounts. So this is a list of the information that has been imported there. Just going to close out. And if we pop into transactions, you'll now see that I've got those 100 transactions from that import file. So again, a lot quicker if that information is coming from somewhere for me to import that than it is to excuse me, than it is to sit there manually keying it in. Right, let's move on and we'll pick up our next example. Now this one, it's a salary journal. Again, I've used the template for this one. It's just got journals on this time. Obviously the other one had a mixture of all types of different transactions. Journals were included on the previous one as well, but this one is salary journal information. So this might be the kind of information if you're not, say you're using Sage 50 payroll, but maybe you're not using the nominal income, you might be using competitor payroll. Shock horror, you might be. So that information might come from non-Sage software, but this is the type of information, if it can be included on an import template, rather than sitting keying that in as a journal, you could just import it. Right, so this information I'm going to import. So let's say that's provided for me. Obviously, they are dated June 2024. That's fine. Obviously, you would expect it to have the accurate date on there if it's up to date information. Now, one thing to be aware of for journals is that you specify the nominal code in both columns, the account reference and the nominal account reference. So it's the same one, same nominal code. So again, we'll just close it and we'll import file number 2. So up to File, Import, Again, you would take your backup. I'm going to choose Audit Trail Transactions. Browse for your file. So it's this one here, file number 2. It does contain headings. I'm using that template again. Now, because we've used the template, again, the mapping is done for me automatically. You'll see what it looks like when it's not done automatically for me in just a couple of minutes. So that's done for me automatically. I'll click next, and then we're ready to go. So we click import at the bottom. Now this time, it's telling me it's got a reference in record 3 and 4 to a non-existent nominal ledger account. So I edit that. So it's this one here in record, it said record 3 and 4. So because we've got headings at the top, it'll be on row 4 and 5. So 2214 student loans and 2216, they mustn't exist at the moment. As I say, they've got to be in there. So if we just pop back to accounts, close out of the imports, and we'll pop into nominal codes and just have a look. So you'll see we don't have that on there. So 22116, is it 2216? Let me just pop back. So 22114 for student loans, and we've got 22164 for other deductions. So what I'll quickly do is I'll just going to quickly create those. So 2214 student loans. We'll put deductions in there as well. Save that one. And 2216, and I'll just call this other deductions. This is the kind of thing that you may get caught out with. So either you've maybe entered the wrong nominal code, or maybe you've just assumed certain nominal codes will be there. So it doesn't create those nominal codes on the fly. So if they're not there, it will essentially stop the import. So we'll save that one. So they should now both be on the list, not that one and that one. So 2214, 2216. Right, we'll close out of the import file. We'll go back to Sage. We'll try and import that one again. So File, Import, Audit Trail Transactions, browse for the file. It does contain headings. The mapping is done for me. When this was introduced, the mapping, obviously, it meant that you had a lot less preparation to do. Just gives it that added flexibility. So prior to that, you would have had to have your Excel file in your columns would have had to be in this specific order that's mentioned. So we just click next, click import, and then it imports it this time. We'll click close, pop into transactions, and we should, on the end of the list there, from 101 to 107, we've got that salary journal information. Obviously, salary journals these days, it can be massive, depending on how I suppose the level of detail that you want to break it down by. So if you've got things like pension scheme deductions, your business might have more than one pension scheme. The likes of your payments for salary payments, I've just got one line against 7,000 there, but you might have different types of salary, so different types of employee. And again, it depends on how you want to analyze that. Right, let's move on. We'll go on to our next one. Again, common thing when people think about importing those repetitive transactions, direct debits and standing orders. Do you still manually sit and key those in every month? Now, these days, you've got things like bank feeds as well. So if you are connected to a bank feed, things like standing orders, direct debits, just as they download, you can have them be created automatically. Again, saving you time. It means you wouldn't even have to go through this process of importing, let alone manually entering it. But let's assume you weren't using bank feeds and you just want to, you're sitting there at the moment just keying that information in manually. With this, it means I could set up a list of the direct debits that I want to use, or the standing orders. And then each month, all I would do is I would edit the file and I would come in and maybe amend the dates. So you're right, well, this transaction, actually this month or in that month, I know it's going to go through on the 28th for whatever reason. So we got a list of bank payments. We've also got a payment there, PA transaction, which is going to be made against a supplier. So where we maybe just make a monthly payment to them. So anyway, we've got our file, it's all prepared, it's got the right information in there. We'll just close. And we'll go back to Sage. We'll back into the import wizard. Again, just start working through the wizard. So it's audit trail transactions. Browse for the file. So it's file number 3. It does contain headings. Still using a template at this stage. So because we're using the template, again, the mapping is done for me, saving me time. And then we're ready to import. Pass 1, pass 2. And again, that's that information imported for me. So things like not just standing orders, direct debits, any adjustments that you always put through, I suppose where it's a consistent value or transaction type. If you're sitting there keying it in manually, get it on a spreadsheet. Maybe use the templates if you haven't already set up a spreadsheet yourself, just to make it a little bit quicker. And then it's just a case of updating that each month and then importing it. Popping into transactions, you can see at the end here, from transaction 108, we've got the list of bank payments and then that payment on account on the end with that date I just amended as well. Right, this time I've got the same list, but this time it's not on a template, it's where I've used my own file. So I just open that one so you can see that. And it looks a bit like this, quite common. Now what I'll do with this one, I'm going to change the date of this one. I'm just going to say this one is 30th of August 2024. Just so you can see there is a difference when it brings that in. Right, so we'll save that and just close out. Go back to Sage and we'll import that information. So file, import. Again, you would take your backup. Choose audit trail transactions. Browse for your file. It's this one. Make sure I've got the right one. Yep, it's number 4, which is the list of direct debits and standing orders where I've used my own file. So we're not using one of the Sage templates this time. It does contain headings though. Now this time, my own file, if I just go back to it for a moment, what the templates don't have is they don't have these worksheets at the bottom. They just have the single worksheet only. But this time I've got 2 tabs essentially at the bottom, 2 worksheets, one called direct debits, one called test. Just close back out, go back to the import, and that's what it lists here as part of that wizard. So which of the worksheets actually contains the information that you want to import? So in my case, it's on the direct debits worksheet. So that's the one I select. Click next. Now this takes me into the field mappings, and this time, because we've got different headings to what Sage requires or wants, some of the fields aren't mapped this time. Some of them, obvious, date. I've used date for the date of the transaction. That's what Sage requires. So it tries to map as much as it can. But the others, some of them are required as well. There's nothing against them. So basically what we're saying is the transaction type from my import file, which column contains that information. So in my case, it's the tran column. For the account reference, again, I need to map that one. So in this case, it's the account number, the nominal code or the nominal account reference. That is just in the column that I've got the heading nom. Department code, it's not a required field. So actually, I'm just going to skip it this time. I think I've got it included. So do I have it included? Actually, I don't even have it included in this. I don't. So I'll just leave that one blank. There's nothing in my file for department code. Date is date. Reference. If I scroll down, I thought I did have a reference, but I don't. So again, I'll just leave that one blank. It's not a required field. Details, it has mapped for me. Tax code, it's mapped for me. So net, the net value of that transaction is in just my net column, and the tax amount is in my, what have I called it? My VAT column. So once I've done the mapping, just click next, click import. It does pass 1, pass 2, and that's it entered. So again, pop into transactions, and you'll see the latest transactions, including that one where I set the date to 30th of August, just so you can see it has imported that specific file. One thing to be aware of though, so you can see this transaction and this transaction, it's exactly the same thing. They've come from separate files. It didn't say, hold on a minute, you've already imported a transaction like this one. So I could import the same file time and time again, and each time it would add new information in. It does not check in that way. Has it already been imported? It doesn't keep a record of the import file itself to say, right, you've already imported this file. It will just try and import that information. Do be careful, which is again one of the reasons we always prompt take that backup. Right, let's get back now. You've seen how to import. Now we've looked at importing transactions. What you can't do is you can't import into the invoices list. You can't import to the quotations list or the sales orders or purchase orders list. So when I've imported invoices, it's as if you've entered equivalent of entering a batch invoice. It goes directly into the audit trail, your transactions list, and then that would automatically appear against the relevant customer account as well. Now that's great for when things go according to plan, but what happens when they don't? So if I open this file, and we've got that transaction type. Now remember I said earlier, the transaction types that when it comes to entering the transaction type, you can't import a PP. Any PP needs to be changed to a PA, so a payment on account. Similarly, if it's an SR, a receipt against a customer, that needs to be imported as an SA. So if I try to import a PP transaction, so this is file number 5, I'll just save that change there. We'll quickly work through that import again. So file import, audit trail transactions, number 5. Use the template, so it's got that information there. Click next, click import. And this time it tells me there's one error detected. So it says error in record 9, the type, illegal transaction type. So if I just click edit import, remember, because I've got headings, record number 9 is on row 10. So in this case, I just need to change that to a valid transaction type. Save the changes, close out, and then if I try and import that one again, it should go through this time. Just quickly run through it. The mapping is done for me. Click import. This time, because I've corrected that, it imports everything. Now it's not going to import the first sort of 8 transactions and then stop at the one that's got the error. It won't do that. It's all or nothing. It all needs to meet the validation, which is pass 1 followed by pass 2. So it's not going to, if you've got 100 transactions listed and 2 of them have a problem, it's not going to import anything. It's not going to import the other 98, and these 2 you then need to sort out. It's basically all or nothing. Hope that makes sense. Now, other ones, obviously we've got an example of where you've got a salary journal where actually it doesn't balance. So I'll make sure it doesn't balance. I can't remember if I've fixed it on the previous demo or not. So we'll make sure it doesn't balance. I'll save the changes. Journals, like anything else, when you enter journals, if you enter them manually, it's got to balance your debits and credits. So if you're importing a batch of transactions, that's something to bear in mind. And it's not just the total of debits and credits, but they've got a normal rules apply. So if you're entering a journal, they will all be on the same date. So you couldn't have one debit for £100 and one credit for £100, but be on different dates. It's got to balance on the same date. So quickly running through that import wizard again, just so you can see what the error looks like. Balance journal. And obviously because there are a number of parts to that journal, it's basically saying, even it might just be one issue, but basically it's saying I've got all parts of that journal are basically contributing to an unbalanced journal. Now that could be, maybe I forgot to change the dates of one of those. But in this case, it's basically just that value I changed. Good job I changed it, otherwise it looks like it would have imported. So again, that's something to watch out for. So it's not going to let you bring in transactions where it would then unbalance your accounts. Just want to give you this quick tip as well. So if you've got something like this, going back to almost like the what we looked at the beginning, if you've got any blank lines, it will assume that's the end of your file. So even though I've got all those transactions listed, and you might be looking at yours and think, oh, actually this one here, I want to get rid of. Now don't do that. If you don't just delete the contents of the cells or the row, you need to delete the row itself, just to budge everything up a line. If the import wizard comes across a blank line, so we've got one here for instance, it would assume that's the end of the file. So what it would do is, assuming all this information up to row 11 is fine and it passes sort of the pass 1, pass 2, it would then import that information. But the rest of the information would not be. It would not give you any error saying there's information after the blank line. It would recognize that as being the end of your file. So again, that's something to bear in mind. So if you do like to sort all of your transactions out for import into like all of your bank payments in one area, then maybe you leave a gap just thinking you're going to be really well organized. You might have then a list of bank receipts and then invoices and journals. Just be aware of those blank lines. So I could import this transaction, this file, and I'm none the wiser that actually it hasn't imported from 13 onwards. Again, just something to watch out for. Now, if we pick on this one, just the final area I want to quickly pick up on is the grouping. Now, some of you may have attended the transaction grouping webinar where we talked about when you're entering transactions, how they group together. Now, generally for transactions, if they're entered on the same screen, they're against the same account, whether that's the same customer or same bank account. If they then have the same date and same reference and they're consecutive on that list, it would group them together. So what I'm going to quickly do, I've got some that meet that requirement. So these two at the top here, lines 2 and 3, they've got the same bank account. They are different nominal codes, but they have the same reference and the same date. Now, if I just, so it's file number 8, go into Sage, and we'll quickly run 2 final examples, just in case anyone's watching the clock. So this time I'll just import the same ways we've already been doing audit trail transactions. Browse for that file. File 8, that one. Import it. So we can see we've got them listed. We pop into transactions. You can see the one with rent. These two here. So 135 and 136. Now those transactions, if I edit the first one, 135, you'll see there's only one part to it. So it's actually imported them as what we would term 2 separate header transactions. So similarly, if you import a batch invoice, for instance, it might have loads of individual lines, and ordinarily you would want those to group together. But because we haven't chosen the audit trail transactions grouped, it doesn't do that. It imports them all as individual transactions. So if you are wanting, you're in that position and you think, actually, I do want these transactions to be grouped, we can go through File, Import. Now you can't do this retrospectively. If they're not grouped, they're not grouped if you've already gone through that process. But I'm just going to import the same file again. So I'll do it a second time. So this time we'll choose Audit Trail Transactions Grouped. Browse for the same file that we just imported. Open. Next. And then import. That's it done. And if we go back to transactions, now the transactions themselves still going to be listed individually, but if we highlight one of them, so 143, if we highlight that, click edit, you'll see this time it's got the 2 parts. So it's what you would term, you've got 2 splits, but you've got 1 header transaction, which is in some instances, some areas, it's just going to show those transactions as what you term a grouped transaction. So for instance, if we went into the, let's say we went into the bank reconciliation window, for instance. Or right to the bottom so we can see that transaction, looking for the rent. Maybe if I scroll down, that would help. I couldn't see it for looking there. So we're looking for the rent transaction. Put them in numerical order, that would help. So it was 143, and you can see it's grouped it together. If you're not that familiar with transaction grouping, there is that recording available on our recorded webinars list. So do check that one out. But hopefully that's given you a little bit of a good understanding of import and essentially how it can work for you. Now, I've been really quiet on the questions from this morning. So if you've got any questions that you want to ask before you disappear or before we end the webinar, then start popping them in there now. I'll pick them up in just a moment. If you weren't quite with us at the beginning of the session, to pop your questions in, you just need to click the little speech bubble on your toolbar down the right, and then you'll be able to start typing in that box in the bottom corner. So pop it in there, click send, and I'll try and pick those up in just a moment. Just to remind you, there's loads of great information to support you with your software in our help center, whether that's maybe you want a step-by-step guide on importing, then that's available. So do check that out. Copilot, if you may have heard about this. It's something we've been mentioning on the webinars for quite some time now, but it's still probably the newest feature that's available in Sage 50 accounts. The idea is it will surface your information, so helping you to understand and manage debt within your software, helping you to manage stock, understand your business performance. So that type of thing. If you want to find out more about it, it's what we term your sort of digital assistant. It's going to surface that information for you. And some great enhancements have been added in Sage 50 Accounts version 32 to the Copilot option as well. So if you want to find out more, get yourself signed up for one of those. Links included on your follow-up email. Finally, just before everyone disappears, let me quickly take the opportunity to thank you for coming along. I'll pick up any questions in just a moment, but many thanks. I hope you've enjoyed it, found it useful, and going forward, I hope you do spot those opportunities. Just in case anyone has that question as well, I'll quickly nip it in the bud. If you're thinking, well, could I download my bank statement? If you think about your bank statement, the route you want to go down is using a bank feed. But if you think about your bank statement, if you were to download that, and then maybe you think about, could I import that? Probably no is going to be the answer to that one. There's going to be so much information that's missing. So remember those required fields that I talked about earlier. What Sage needs per transaction. What information is included on your bank statement? You're going to have the date of the transaction. You're going to have maybe some details or a reference, and you'll have an overall value. That's probably about it, whether that's money in or money out. But Sage requires a transaction type. It needs to know which customer, supplier, or nominal code, which bank account number, what the net value is, the tax code that you want to use for the transaction, and also the VAT element itself. So by the time you were to fill that information in, you'd probably find, well, actually, I could have just keyed that information in quicker. So although potentially you could download your bank statement and then amend it and then import, you'd probably find you'd take more time to do that than it would take just to sit and key that in the first place. But any other questions, or if you think of any afterwards, drop me an email. I'll try and point you in the right direction. Your follow-up email will be with you in round about an hour's time. It's got the link on to this morning's recording. So if you need a bit of a recap or you want to share it with your colleagues or work through it in your own time, then just watch out for that. It also includes a link so you can register for our future webinars. In June and July now, we are going to be running our next digital badge. That will be for VAT. So if you are interested, get yourself signed up now. Get your spot reserved. So loads of sessions there just to help you become proficient with VAT and Sage 50 accounts. There's also a link to our recordings. So if you are interested or you've missed any sessions or need a bit of a recap, again, that link's included for you. Now, I still don't have any questions, so I think in that case, we'll just wrap the webinar up. If you think of any after you do leave, get in touch or speak to our support team and they'll be able to help as well. So once again, many thanks, take care, and hopefully we'll see you on some other webinars very soon.